when reading the fine print actually saved me. Tell me about a time when carefully reading a document saved you from a big mistake. When I decided to propose to my girlfriend, I went to a well-known jewelry store to buy a ring. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I also knew there was a good chance she might want to exchange it for something else. So I asked the staff in advance, if she doesn't like it, can I return it and get my money back? They confidently said, of course, no problem. I proposed. Everything went great, but just as I expected, my fiancé ended up choosing a different ring from another store. So I went back to return the original one. The employee smiled and said, sure, just sign this first. She handed me a small form. I was literally about to sign it, but something made me quickly read through it. And there it was, in tiny print. I confirmed that this purchase is final and non-refundable. I looked up and asked, why exactly am I supposed to sign this? Her expression instantly changed. She took the paper back and called the manager. The manager came over and without any questions processed a full refund to my card. One small line I almost ignored could have cost me $900. By the way, this happened at People's Jewelers in Vancouver. I'm a musician, and once I almost got screwed over by a contract. I was offered a deal with a label. At first, it sounded great, but the moment I opened the contract, I knew something was off. It was written in horribly broken English. From the very first lines, you could tell the whole thing was a mess. But then it got worse. First, according to the contract, I had to give them the rights to my name. Literally, my stage name would no longer be mine. Second, they wanted full rights to all my past songs, even the ones I made long before they ever contacted me. And third, the most insane part, if they failed to sell all the physical copies of my music, I would have to cover their losses out of my own pocket. So they take the risk and I pay for it? I closed the contract and told them to get lost. Sometimes the best decision is walking away. My husband already signed. I saved us from a disaster. My husband and I were buying a house. He got there earlier and signed all the papers without thinking twice. I arrived later. I had some things to take care of. I sat down and started carefully reading the loan application. The lender looked at me and said, "You don't really need to read all that. Your husband already signed." I said, "No, I'd rather double check." And that's when it got interesting. According to the documents, we were about to take a $250,000 loan at 25% interest. 25%! I just closed the papers and said, "We're not signing this." Then I stood up and started to leave. The lender panicked and shouted after me, "I'll take you to court." I turned around and calmly replied, "Going to court will be cheaper than paying your rates." And I walked out. Since then, I handle all mortgage decisions myself. Oh, and that lender? He was my husband's old school friend. How a car dealership tried to scam recent grads on a zero-interest loan. My wife and I went to a dealership to pick out our first car. Our plan was simple: take advantage of a special promotion for recent graduates and get a zero-interest financing deal. The finance manager offered us two options, a 3-year term and a 5-year term. He swore up and down that both options were interest-free. To keep our monthly payments lower, we opted for the 5-year plan. The guy immediately slid a stack of papers across the desk, rushing us to sign everything as quickly as possible. But we decided not to hurry and actually read the fine print. And it's a good thing we did. It turned out that the 5-year loan didn't qualify for the promotion at all. Right there in black and white, the contract stated an interest rate of 6.5%. To us, that's a lot more than the promised zero. When we called them out on this deception and threatened to walk out, the manager's tone shifted instantly. Realizing they were about to lose a sale, they started making concessions and even gave us a direct discount on the car itself. It's scary to think how many graduates fall for this trap, signing papers blindly because they trust friendly specialists. This experience just proved it to me once again. Never trust words, only trust the text in the contract. Why you should never trust a landlord without reading the fine print. My landlord, John, seemed chill enough when he agreed to let me out of my lease a month early. He already had a new tenant lined up, and all we needed was my written consent and a simple amendment to the original contract. But here's the thing. I knew John had done time for fraud. So naturally, I didn't just take his word for it. I read every single line. And man, am I glad I did. Tucked away in the text was a safety clause. If anything went sideways with the new tenant, I would stay on the hook and be forced to keep paying rent for an apartment I no longer lived in. When I called him out on it, he just shrugged it off. Oh, right, I just added that part to protect myself a bit. In the end, he still stole my security deposit. Honestly, it's time to take this to court. I really hate you, John. How a lawyer almost sold my wife's car along with our business. We were in the middle of selling our business. Everything was on the table: equipment, inventory, supplies, except for my wife's car. Even though it was registered under the company, we made it crystal clear to our lawyer: the car is not for sale. A week later, the contract arrived. Guess what was tucked away in the list of assets? Yep, the car. Thank God we decided to scrutinize every single page before sending it to the buyer. We managed to strike that clause out just in time. This experience taught me one thing: no matter how professional your lawyer is, always be your own last line of defense. How a dream job offer almost turned my life into a prison. I was ready to risk everything for this job. I moved 350 miles away from my family and friends, and even rented an apartment just a few minutes' walk from the office. The interview had been a breeze, and I even ran into an old colleague there. Everything felt like a fairy tale until I actually opened the contract. Technically, I was already hired. I just had to drop off the signed paperwork. But the night before my start date, I decided to take one last look at the fine print. What I found made my skin crawl. There were 3 specific clauses that changed everything. Lifelong stagnation. The contract explicitly stated that I would never be promoted. The position I was hired for was the only position I could ever hold at that company, forever. They claimed they wanted people dedicated to their roles without any ambition for growth. Zero health coverage. The company bluntly stated that my health was my own responsibility. No insurance, no medical benefits, absolutely nothing. The technology ban. This was the most insane part. A non-compete clause stated that if I ever left or was fired, I would be prohibited for an entire year from working for any company that used computers or had an internet connection. Given that I was hired as a tech support analyst, this was essentially a ban on working anywhere in the modern world. Despite the impressive salary, I packed my bags and ran. I had to break my new lease, but it was a small price to pay to avoid selling myself into digital slavery. The day a single clause sparked a restaurant revolt. At my last restaurant job, management sent out new employment contracts for everyone to sign. I opened mine and immediately spotted something suspicious: a non-compete clause. Basically, it stated that if I ever left the job, I wouldn't be allowed to work in the restaurant industry for a certain period. I didn't keep it to myself. I told my coworkers exactly what was hidden in the fine print. The result? Almost no one signed the new agreement. Within a week, management was forced to rewrite the entire thing. Think about it, a non-compete for a restaurant? What mysterious trade secrets are they trying to protect? The truth is much darker. It's a tactic to keep people from quitting. If you take away someone's ability to work elsewhere, they'll put up with a toxic environment until the bitter end. Here's the reality. Non-compete clauses are usually only enforceable when it comes to high-level industry secrets that could give a competitor an unfair advantage. Even then, it's a coin toss, usually a 50-50 chance whether a court would even uphold it. Don't let your workplace turn into a trap.